Some people are really alarmed about the teaching about grace, thinking that it kind of just lowers the standards that God requires. And they say, well, look, come on, you need some law to keep people on the straight and narrow. It's all very well talking about grace, but that'll lead to chaos. No, you must have some law. Well, the New Testament doesn't take that line at all, not remotely. In fact, Paul says this when he writes to Titus: the grace of God has appeared, teaching us to say no. I love that. That's the New International Version translation of that verse. The law is external to us and says to us, thou shalt not. And so grace is so very, very different. Grace has appeared, Paul says. Now, he's talking about the coming of Jesus, but we know that God's always been gracious. Moses asked to see the glory of God. He had a passion to know God and asked, may I see your glory? And God said, no, you can't see my glory. But he kind of hid him, and then he made his name pass before him. In other words, the revelation of who he was. The Lord, gracious, merciful. And God's always been gracious. God was so gracious to Elijah when he said, take my life from me. He was gracious to Moses when he also hit bad spots. David, all these Old Testament characters knew God was gracious. But in the coming of Jesus, this verse says, the grace of God shone out. A kind of bright, shining clarity. The law came through Moses. Grace came through Jesus Christ. Now, Paul is saying this grace didn't come because God thought, oh, what's the point? I can't get them to be holy. I'll drop the standard. No, it didn't come with that purpose. Grace came teaching us from within, from our own conviction, to say no. Yeah, we have to be taught to say no. If you don't learn to say no, you're going to get into trouble even while you're a teenager, because the downward pull is everywhere. It's in the culture, it's on every side. So we need to learn to say no. But we learn from grace teaches us to say no. It's not that it's an imposed thing that we don't really agree with. That's the problem of being a legalist, that sadly your heart isn't changed. You just have to keep the rules. You have to try and obey. Grace does something inward in me. It changes me from the inside and teaches me with conviction to say no. It justifies me freely as a gift. It shows me that God has made me righteous, so why would I want to mess up? He justifies me before I've started. It's not like it used to be for me at school, should try harder, could do better. No, grace says you're accepted, you're justified freely from the beginning. I get such an internal motivation. And it says this, Jesus gave himself. In this very text in Titus 2, Jesus gave himself. I have a Saviour who loves me so much that he gave himself. He gave himself over to those he had created, to beat him up, to smash him to pieces, to hang him on a cross. He loved me that much. He came to the cross, he trembled. He said, can this cup be taken from me? No, to this end came I, to this hour. And glorify your name, Father. He was utterly yielded to the Father's will, longing for us for the joy set before him. He endured the cross for the joy, his joy in having us for himself. When God works these things into our inside, I have a Saviour who so loved me, who so wants me, who made me clean as a gift. I find my internal motivation has changed. I choose to say no. Grace teaches me from conviction to say no. Grace doesn't come to bring the standard down. The grace comes to change me from the inside so I can surpass the laws of the Pharisees. When grace came to that early church in Acts 2, they outgave any giving in the Old Testament. Grace changed them from the inside. Hey, let's enjoy the wonderful grace of God.